Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Fantasy Pros Dynasty Football Podcast. I am Ryan Wormley, joined as always by Scott Bogman and Pat Fitzmaurice. And guys, I'm going to just blow past any kind of introduction, any kind of, hey, how you doing? Because we are trying to get through a 5-round Superflex rookie mock draft today. This is for the folks who they do dive deep in their own rookie drafts. And hey, you guys only ever do 2 rounds or 3 rounds. We're going 5 deep today, so hopefully you stick around for all of that. And we obviously have now 60 names to pack into this episode. So we'll go really quickly here. Just want to quickly let everybody know all of our early 2024 consensus rankings and tiers can be found at fantasypros.com/rankings. You can also navigate from there to our staff dynasty rankings on the site as well, including rookie rankings. We will go in here. I will point out that I have been, once again, not given the first pick. We went through an entire draft season with me never getting the first pick, and I already called Bogman out on it before the show, and I'm going to call him out on the show as well. It will be Fitz first, Bogman second, and myself third.
Ravens fans can't have the first.
I was going to say, what do you have to say for yourself? You're going to call me a Ravens fan? Fine, we'll move past it. Fitz, who are you taking with the 101 in the Superflex rookie mock?
All right, before we start, Worm, can we stipulate that we are not drafting for need or anything, that we are just taking best player available? So if one team happens to be stacked up with 4 running backs, it's simply because they believe that's where the value was at that point?
Yes, every pick is within the vacuum of that pick. It's not contextual to like, oh, the 201, the 101 already took a court. No, not that. It's all who you would take in that pick in a vacuum.
Good deal. At 101, I'm going to take Caleb Williams. Not a big surprise. I think he's been the consensus 101 in Superflex drafts, although we occasionally see the first non-quarterback go in the 101 spot. But Caleb, I believe in the player, and he just walks into such a good situation with the pass-catching group of DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Odunze. Great setup for a rookie quarterback, maybe one of the better ones in recent memory. So he's an easy 101 for me.
Yeah, not something to overthink. He's been the 101 throughout this entire process. Obviously, draft night didn't change that. If anything, it helped getting Odunze in there as well. So clear 101. Bogman, who are you taking at 102?
Give me Marvin Harrison at number 2. And I know it's a super flex and it's tough to, tell you to not take a quarterback, especially with some of these good quarterbacks on the board. And this is the real reason I put myself number 2 here, Worm, is because I think this is the hardest spot. I think Caleb is definitely, he's guaranteed the starting gig from maybe not week 1, but very early in the season. I think he's going to start week 1 with no issues. He has the great weapons around him. They have built a plan around Caleb Williams. The other guys, McCarthy wasn't necessarily their guy. It seemed like maybe they wanted Maye from Minnesota. I think Daniels has the crazy rushing upside, of course, but he also has the injury thing that we worry about because he is a little bit slighter and he runs around with reckless abandon. So Marvin Harrison is a guarantee to me. I think he's a top 5 wide receiver already right now. He's an alpha in Arizona. I think that he's going to get a gigantic target share. So it's easy Marvin Harrison for me, even with some good QBs in a super flex mock on the board here.
So I think, Caleb at 1 and Marvin at 2 have generally been kind of consensus. Those are the most common iteration you see. I'm kind of going away from that here. I am taking Malik Nabers, not Jayden Daniels. And it's what you mentioned, Boggs. It's the injury stuff. I really, really struggle to see how a guy who runs as frequently as he does, when the pocket breaks down, Jayden Daniels is taking off, and who takes as brutal of hits as he does. Obviously there's a lot to like with him, and the rushing is a cheat code and all that. But I think Malik Nabers is pretty much close to a sure thing as well, right up there with Marvin Harrison. A lot of the advanced analytics put them really neck and neck throughout last season. He's going to get a ton of targets in that offense. Daniel Jones is not maybe as good as Kyler Murray, but he's not terrible. If he's healthy with Brian Dable running that offense, he is at least good enough for Malik Nabers, I think, as the wide receiver 1 in that offense to be really good right off the bat. So I will take him at the 103, and we move to Fitz with the 104.
Yeah, not an easy choice at 103, Worm. I concur with your selection of maybe the safer Malik Nabers over Jayden Daniels, but that makes things really easy for me at 104. I'm going to take Jayden Daniels and go for that lofty rushing upside, the potential for Jayden Daniels to be a QB1 in his first year in the league because of what he can do on the ground. If he does indeed keep himself from getting crash test dummied too often in his rookie year and stays on the field.
Crash test dummy is such a good term. I mean, it's perfect. Fits. It really is.
It really is.
For my pick here, it's easy. It's JJ McCarthy. And I kind of see this as an end of a tier as well in terms of Superflex dynasties, because you have the 3 QBs in there, and I all think that these QBs could eventually be the number 1 QB. Obviously, Jayden Daniels has the crazy rushing upside. If he can stay healthy and maybe learn to step out of bounds, slide, there's a lot to like here. He had a higher big time throw percentage and lower turnover worthy play than the other guys in this tier. He's great. My pick of JJ McCarthy is a team that passes so much. I mean, they were 4th in passes thrown last season, the Minnesota Vikings, with the musical chairs that they had at quarterback after Kirk Cousins went down. So I think McCarthy has a chance just in this high volume offense with Addison and Jefferson to also be the number 1 QB, which means in Superflex, you could be the number 1 player. So I think all of these dudes that are this good and have this amount of upside, to me, it's the end of a tier. So now the real reason I gave you this pick, Worm. I still think these next couple picks are pretty easy here, though.
Well, I'm positive I know what the next 2 picks will be. Even though I have the first of those 2 picks, I'm not sure what the order will be because I'm still trying to think it through. I don't see it as a tier break. I do think that I'm going to go with the 4th quarterback, who I also think is in the same category of could be the number 1 quarterback one day, of this grouping, and that's Drake Maye. The landing spot scares me, obviously. It doesn't scare me as much as it did right off the bat, and I've talked about this on a couple shows, and Erickson and I just had a conversation about this on the TikTok Live recently, but with quarterbacks specifically, I'm just not worrying about landing spot anymore because the quarterback himself can elevate. We saw it with CJ Stroud, and Drake Maye is not CJ Stroud, but the quarterback himself can turn that landing spot from a bad one to a good one. It's also clear that New England knows they need to add offensive talent there based on how the rest of their draft went, adding a couple of receivers, some linemen. So I'm a believer in the prospect. Quarterback is too valuable. I really, really, really hate to pass up the guy that Fitz is about to take, but I just think quarterback is too important. And getting Drake Maye with the 6th pick in a rookie draft in Superflex, I'm over the moon about that in a vacuum. Fitz, would you have taken, you're going to take Rome Odunze, everybody knows it. Would you have taken him over Maye or even McCarthy in these last couple picks?
No, I would have taken Drake Maye. And for me, I would have taken either quarterback over Rome Odunze as much as I like Odunze. And I have moved McCarthy ahead of Maye, but I have second guessed myself on that because I like Maye more. And now we're hearing these reports that multiple teams tried to trade up with the Patriots to take Drake Maye at number 3, including the Vikings. So the fact that Maye was the preferred choice of the Vikings over McCarthy, maybe just because the landing spot for McCarthy was so good and the one for Maye is less than optimal, maybe we should still like Maye more. That's just something people with rookie drafts coming up are going to have to decide, and it's a tough call, no question about it. So yeah, I am going to take Rome Odunze here. The last of the big 3 wide receivers. I think in most years, Odunze would have had a strong case to be the wide receiver 1 in a rookie class. Just so good in contested catch situations. Just throw it to this guy, even if he's well covered, and chances are he's coming down with it. And I'm not bothered by the fact that he's going to have a lot of target competition in year 1 with DJ Moore and Keenan Allen, because Allen is probably only going to be with the Bears for 1 year. And he and Caleb Williams are going to get to grow together. It's going to be fun to watch.
I think that's a very smart, way to lay it out. I really don't care that he's the 3rd guy on the depth chart for year 1. Like the long term, the stock could not be higher pairing him with Caleb Williams. So I think that's absolutely the right pick there. Boggs, what do you think?
Great pick. That's what I would have done. But I'll say this: my pick here, I'm going to take Brock Bowers, and I think this is a 3-man tier, and I have Odunze, Bowers, and then Maye 3rd because I just really don't like New England and their pass catchers. So I think it may be, and remember, I do look in a little bit of a shorter window than most people, even for Dynasty. So For me, I just don't know how long it's going to take Maye to get up to speed. I know Odunze is great, and maybe it takes him a little longer too, as Fitz said, because Keenan Allen is going to be there this season. But they're gonna learn to grow. I think Odunze is really close to a lock, and Brock Bowers, it offers you that opportunity to have a Travis Kelce type player at the position, a player that is so much better than everybody else at this position eventually, that he is outscoring everyone, and he offers you so much of a gap at that spot that I think he has to be taken very, very high. And Fitz knows I've done it in 2 drafts. I have got Brock Bowers. He's a player I really like, and I want to roster. So Bowers for me here, pretty easy.
You talked about the tier. We talked before the NFL draft about how it was kind of a really clear top 8 once J.J. McCarthy had elevated into that top 8. It does feel like the consensus is that Bowers is maybe falling back a bit. He's still in that 8, but he's almost a tier of 1 after the top 7, at least in a lot of the rankings and mock drafts that I've seen. Really, like the way I've kind of seen it playing out mostly is it's really like a tier of 2 at the top, then another 2, then 3, and then 1. Now you can kind of quibble, like you said, you kind of have it as a tier of 3 towards the end. Sure. You have McCarthy in the higher tier, but that's kind of like how it's played out, is that Caleb, Marv, Malik, Jayden, McCarthy, Maye, Odunze, and then Bowers. So, like, we were talking last week, I got Bowers at the 110 in a draft recently. Like, he is, I think, falling a bit behind some of these other 7. I think that's a mistake. I'm totally with you, Bogdan. This is the pick I would have made. I do not think that the landing spot was not my favorite. I do not think it's enough to knock him out of that top 8. I just think that the prospect is so good. Just quickly fits on that top 8. Is that kind of how you're seeing it play out too?
Yeah, mostly. And I have seen there was a draft I was in where Jonathon Brooks went ahead of Brock Bowers, which kind of shocked me. I mean, like, I think Bowers, if you needed a tight end and maybe you were set at a wide receiver, I could make a case for taking Bowers over Odunze. Like, Bowers is fantastic, and even though the landing spot is maybe not what we had hoped for, the Raiders eventually will probably get the quarterback situation figured out. And who knows? I mean, like, we saw Gardner Minshew support Michael Pittman quite well last year in Indianapolis. So I don't hate the spot. And plus, he is so versatile. Does it matter that Michael Mayer's there? No. It doesn't matter that a target hog like Devontae Adams is there. Probably not. I mean, Bowers is going to be the number 2 target.
Might make it better for him.
Yeah.
Yeah. I completely agree, Fitz. And I think what you're seeing when you have a guy like Brooks taken ahead, usually it's a running back, right? And it's the desperation of the position. And that is why we said we're not doing this with, team context or anything in this mock. So, but it is desperation. People get desperate for a certain position because they're in a bad spot, and they take a guy like Brooks ahead of some talented players because they got to have somebody to fill it.
So unless you're talking about a different league, Fitz, we don't even need to speculate. I was the one who took Brooks over Bowers in our work Dynasty League, but that was because I had the 108.
Debro did it too.
Debro loves Brooks, but in that league in particular, that's part of why I did, because I had the 108 and I took Brooks. Debro had the 109. I knew he would have taken him there, and he already had Laporta and Kincaid. So I was like, there's a pretty good chance that Bowers will then get to me at the 110. I do rank Bowers higher in a vacuum, irrespective of team need and trying to play that context. But it is something to keep in mind that you should be thinking about the context of the teams around you when you're making every decision.
Yeah, now that you remind me of it, Brooks has actually gone ahead of Bowers in 3 of the 4 rookie drafts I've been involved in, because this wasn't either of those leagues. This was a different league. And the friend who took Jonathon Brooks, he had the 107 and the 109, so he wound up with Bowers anyway. He just basically, he was going to get Brooks, I think, no matter what, but he wound up with basically Brooks and Bowers instead of Brooks and Odunze.
So I'm up at the 109, and this is very clearly a tier break between the top 8, at least in my opinion. So the 9th pick is not an easy one. I'm not going to go with Brooks, we've just been talking about. I'm going to go with Ladd McConkey. Part of it is just like, even though this isn't a real draft we're doing, I do have FOMO in that I just haven't gotten Ladd in any of the rookie drafts I've done. And he's very clearly, well, maybe not clearly, but like I think to me clearly is going to be the top target earner in this offense, in an offense with Justin Herbert. We've talked a lot about how, like, Greg Roman offense, they're going to run a lot, but they will throw enough that the top target earner can still be productive. Ladd is really, really, talented, obviously. He can play all over the field. Gets paired with a great quarterback. I think you can make a case for about 5 different players at the 109, and for the sake of this, draft, I'm going with Ladd. and setting up Fitz for the next pick.
You really are setting me up. I thought I was going to have a dilemma here, and no, instead you just handed me Xavier Worthy. And like I think Worthy should kind of be the guy who goes after that top 8. Just such a good situation, and I believe in Worthy, the player. I mean, this was a guy who stepped onto campus in Austin at Texas as an 18-year-old freshman and immediately had, what was it, Bugs? 12 touchdowns, 900 some yards.
So fast.
Prolific producer from the get-go. And I think the fact that he was able to do that at age 18, this guy's about more than speed. Like, he is a good football player, a good route runner. He kind of reminds me of Devonta Smith in some ways, and that he is a like nuanced route runner too. In some ways,
I think Tyreek Hill every time I watch him, and I know that's insane. It's an insane comp, and it's a homer comp, and all of that. But it really is the speed that he has makes a difference, and it's not the only thing he has, like Fitz says, but it makes him stand out above everybody else. You know,
my only beef with that Boggs, like I don't think Worthy has the ball tracking or ball skills that
I don't think
that
anybody
Tyreek
has
Hill
at
has.
all.
Yeah,
Tyreek has.
Like, do you? Before we move on to Boggs' pick, Fitz, I want to ask you, and I'm partially thinking of this in the framework of Worthy and McConkey, but just in general with this kind of range of receivers, do you, when you're making rookie picks, think about not only like, hey, look at this fit and I like the talent and all that, but where do I think their value is going to be a year from now? Because when I look at like Ladd McConkey, I think it's likely he gets more targets this season, even in the Chargers offense with Greg Roman, than Xavier Worthy does, because the Chiefs, like, for all the, problems they've had, in the last couple of years replacing that receiver core, there are a lot of mouths to feed in that offense between Travis Kelce. They added Hollywood Brown, also Xavier Worthy. They also don't have the greatest track record of bringing these rookies along. We don't really know exactly what's going to happen with Rashee Rice, but he's another one as well. Whereas like Ladd, I think it's very possible that he has a better statistical season than Worthy in year 1, and therefore as we enter year 2, might be thinking of him as higher value because he's coming off the stronger year. Do you try and think about that when doing rookies, or do you just primarily think about, I like the talent, I like the fit, and go forward?
Mostly talent and fit. I don't turn a complete blind eye to target competition and the outlook as such. But like, I figure if a guy's good, he is going to get his share of targets no matter what. And so like, I'm not going to turn my back on a guy just because he's on a Rome Odunze, for example, who's walking into a really murky target picture in year 1. Don't care. I know Rome Odunze is going to be terrific and have a great career, so I want in on that.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, let's move to Boggs' pick at the 110.
Yeah, Bo Nix.
111.
Yeah, but Bo Nix is my pick here, and it's I did 2 different tiers to start. This tier is 9 guys deep to me, and it's bookended by QB. So Bo Nix here, look, he's a first-round pick. He's a starter now almost immediately. I would say maybe Zach Wilson starts for half the year, but I think we've done the Zach Wilson experiment before. We know it ain't going to work. So Bo Nix is going to be the guy here. And the targets aren't great either. Cortland Sutton is still there as of now, and some inexperience. So you have to put him behind these other QBs. But in a super flex league, even if I don't necessarily need a quarterback, right? I'm taking Bo Nix because someone is going to need a quarterback, and I can get probably more than what is on the board here for a starting quarterback at some point in the next couple of seasons, especially if Bo Nix starts hot. I could get way more than what's on the board. And they're good players on the board. But desperation, and the bigger your league is, obviously, the bigger the need for quarterbacks in a super flex is. So I think it's less about talent for Bo Nix. It's more about the fact that he's starting, and his value as being a starting quarterback in the NFL skyrockets over a lot of these guys. So for me, I have Bo Nix here, and I do kind of like Bo Nix. I don't hate him as much as a lot of the other people I've heard talk about him do. I think he's fine. Do I think he's going to be in that upper echelon of the other guys? Does he have that chance? I don't think so, especially landing in Denver where there's not a lot of great targets. So can that be changed next year? Sure. But they went out and got his number 1 wide receiver at Oregon just to make him comfortable, it almost felt like, because he fell down the board. So I think the value of Bo Nix here is high, and that's why I would take him over some of the other guys. And I like a lot of guys in this tier. So, but give me the QB in a super flex.
It's a really strong case that you make given the format. It's not a move I would have done just because I just like too many of these wide receivers in this range. Fitz, would you be willing to consider Bo Nix at the back end of the first round, or are you still looking at these receivers and running backs?
It's a little too early for me. I did take Bo Nix at 202 or 203 in a rookie draft. Like, I don't hate the pick. We know that that's sort of the economy of Superflex leagues. Get strong at quarterback, and here's a guy who's going to start right away, you would think. Maybe by week 3 or week 4 at the earliest, or at the latest. So yeah, like, I have no beef with it. I don't love Bo Nix as a prospect. I think he might have a limited ceiling, but for a guy who was drafted with the intention for him to be the long-term starter in Denver for Sean Payton, and maybe he can be sort of the dollar store version of Drew Brees for Sean Payton in Denver. So I have no beef with the pick, really.
I will round out the first round with Brian Thomas Jr. He has fallen to the early second in almost every rookie draft I've done. I disagree with that pretty wholeheartedly. He was most people's wide receiver 4 in this class, behind only that elite trio at the top. Going into the NFL draft, he went 4th among that group, at the position on draft night. He's paired with Trevor Lawrence, who I like quite a bit. I get that there are also a lot of mouths to feed in that offense, but at this point, I mean, the talent, I think, is very clear. I think he's gotten better every year in college, and I think he's paired with a young quarterback that I'm happy to see him paired with in the long run. I'm not worried about Gabe Davis. Like, I think Brian Thomas is just the better player, so I'm very happy to get him at the end of the first and not let him slide into the second. Just a quick recap of the first round. In order: Caleb Williams, Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Nabers, Jayden Daniels, J.J. McCarthy, Drake Maye, Rome Odunze, Brock Bowers, Lad McConkey, Xavier Worthy, Bo Nix, and Brian Thomas. Before we move on, I want to let everybody know about Reality Sports Online. By now, most of you have probably heard of Reality Sports Online, the powerful fantasy sports platform where owners get to build and manage their fantasy team like an NFL general manager. But the question is, have you tried it? It's time to go see what all the buzz in the Dynasty community is about. Free agency, multi-year contracts, a rookie draft, multi-team trades, franchise tags, contract extensions, first-round rookie options, automated contract and salary cap functionality, and much, much more. Think it sounds complicated? It's not. The best thing about Reality Sports Online Fantasy Front Office is that it doesn't take any more time than a standard league. It just requires more strategy. Think you're among the fantasy elite? Well, this is the platform to test your mettle. Still not sure? You can test out your general manager skills for free in a mock free agency auction. If you like what you see, use the promo code FANTASYPROS to receive a 10% discount on your team or league today. That's promo code FANTASYPROS to receive a 10% discount on your team or league today. Fantasy just got real at realitysportsonline.com. Fitz, kick us off for round 2 with the 201.
Well, since you guys have left Keon Coleman for me here, I'll just grab him and make sure Boggs doesn't get his grubby little mitts on him. Yeah, I mean, I love this guy. I've liked him for a while. Just phenomenal contested catch skills. Not an elite separator, but it was funny. Last fall, I knew I was going to be in on this guy in Dynasty League. So, like, I watched Florida State games with a little bit more careful an eye, and like, I actually think he's an underrated route runner. I mean, I don't think he's going to be an elite separator because he's not, super quick, not lightning fast, but like, he can get enough separation with the job he does as a route runner, I think, to win at the NFL level. And, we're seeing now he's got this effervescent personality. I think he's going to fit in Buffalo really well. And, I think the Bills Mafia is going to get on board with Keon Coleman. I don't know what he's going to do in year 1. Like, I don't know if he's instantly going to be the Bills' top receiver, but I'm pretty bullish on him long term.
I love that.
Thoroughly unsurprised by the pick.
Yeah, I think most people would be if they've heard Fitz talk about Keon Coleman. And by the way, Keon Coleman was the top of my board, so great pick there. And Brian Thomas, I had right after him, so I go down to my next guy, and it is our first running back. And once again, I get to be a homer here. Jonathon Brooks, running back that went to Carolina by way of Texas. And yes, there's a chance that he misses a chunk of the season to start. He probably start on the pup, which would have him miss the first month of the season. But a dude that is great with the ball in his hands, and he adds, the Panthers know they need to add weapons. That's why they traded up to get Legette. A lot of people didn't, agree with the Legette pick, but it is adding weapons. It's adding weapons to this team. They went and got Sanders. They went and got Brooks. They spent money on the offensive line. I know Miles Sanders they paid, and Chuba Hubbard was better than Miles last year. I don't care. Brooks is better than both of these guys. He is going to be the starting running back with a lot of touches by the end of this season. So easy pick for me here, Jonathon Brooks.
Yeah, that is who my pick would have been if you had gone with the receiver. I think Brooks is definitely RB1 in this class. The opportunity is going to be there. I'm going to take Trey Benson here at the 203, and it's not. There are other players that I might have higher. This isn't me pretending like I have a team need at running back. It's the fact that I think these running backs are kind of a tier of their own at the position. And once Brooks is gone, I'm pretty happy to just take Benson right after that and make sure I get one of those guys, because I don't think the rest of the running back class is likely to contribute as quickly and as immediately as I think these two can. I'm not scared off by James Conner. I think Benson is really good. I think it's an ascending offense. I'm just really excited to have a piece of what was a strong running game last year, and now this is the youngest, most talented guy in that backfield. So I'm really happy to get Trey Benson at the 203 and send it to Fitz for the 204.
Michael Penix Jr. And, it's hard to pick a guy this early when he is probably not going to play in year one if things go according to plan for the team that drafted him, the Atlanta Falcons. And we have seen a lot of shade cast at Atlanta for this move and their sort of overinvestment in the quarterback position. But then again, we've seen people have these arguments on Twitter like, would it really be so wrong for a team to draft two quarterbacks in the early rounds and, give yourself two darts at that all important position? So I don't really have as big a problem with the way the Falcons handled it as some other people. I'm not a huge Kirk Cousins fan, as you guys are probably aware of. So I think Penix could be starting sooner rather than later. I don't think he's going to be waiting 4 years for the entirety of Kirk Cousins' contract. And if you look at that contract, it would be pretty easy for the Falcons to get away from Kirk Cousins after 2 years. Plus, Cousins is coming off a torn Achilles, and he's in his mid-30s. I get the logic of the pick, and I do believe in Michael Penix and his arm talent. He has a heck of an arm. So, yeah, I know he's got kind of a troublesome injury history, but I'm willing to invest in my quarterback room here at 204.
Yeah, again, it just comes down to the value of quarterback in Superflex. I think it's totally justifiable there, given everything we know about the position.
67 QBs started last year. 67 different quarterbacks started.
Yeah.
So, and I don't, we don't need to harp on Michael Penix here, but he's definitely, I had two players left. He was one of them here. And, we may not like it that the Falcons took him, especially that high. Is it something I would do? No. But I think you can easily justify it knowing the QB hell that team has been in for a while. So just have to have one. So I get it. But with this pick, and maybe this is the first reach that I have, but you guys probably know from last week that I like this guy. I'm taking Jaylen Wright, the running back out of Tennessee, going to the Miami Dolphins because I love this offense. I love what McDaniel is doing here. It is speed on speed on speed. I know a lot of people are knocking Achane because they took Wright here. I think he's the Mostert replacement. Mostert is in his 30s. He has an extensive injury history. Most of his production was from touchdowns last season. So I think that is why we see a guy like Jaylen Wright. You can't have Jeff Wilson in there slowing the whole showdown, right? You can't have Salvon Ahmed in there slowing the whole showdown. It's speed on speed on speed with this team. We're keeping it consistent. We're getting Jaylen Wright in here. And I think he could be, Achane is never going to be the guy that get 20 carries to me. He's going to be a 10 to 15 touch guy every single game, and you expect one to break big. I think Wright is going to handle the heavy load when Mostert is gone, and that could be sooner rather than later. So give me Jaylen Wright here.
Fitz, for those who missed us discuss this in our running back rankings last week when talking about the rookies, why do you hate this pick?
I don't hate this pick, actually. And believe it or not, I took Jaylen Wright in a rookie draft of my own. I wanted to be represented in case I'm really wrong about this. Well, one, I think Devon Achane is better, just a better player. And,
I do too, for the record.
Will be first. But obviously, Achane is under 200 pounds and needs a tag team partner. For sure, and Boggs is right. Raheem Mostert is in his early 30s, and it was a minor miracle that Mostert didn't miss any time to injury last year because we know how extensive his injury history is. So it makes sense. And I mean, if things go according to plan and by some miracle Mostert survives another season without injury, I think Wright gets maybe like 50 touches this year. I think he's basically like Travion Williams for the Bengals this year, barring any injury. But the likelihood of either Achane or Mostert getting hurt at some point is probably pretty good. And like Jaylen Wright in an offense predicated on speed, going to a play caller who loves to utilize fast guys. I can't argue with the logic here, and I do not, in fact, hate the pickworm.
All right, I'm up at 206 and really torn between two guys. Like I might as well just flip a coin with how much I like these two guys. I'm going to take Ricky Pearsall, though, and just play the long game and try and read the tea leaves and assume that even if it's not this year, by next year, he will be one of the top two receivers in this offense, and I will just expect that one of Ayuk or Deebo Samuel will not be there anymore. It's a really nice offense to be in. You know, obviously he's going to get, opportunities. I think he's really talented. I loved him as a prospect, Ricky Pearsall. So at the 206, in a good offense, I'm expecting the target competition to open up a bit, at least a year from now, if not this season. I'm happy to get him halfway through the second round. And Fitz, you are on the clock.
Well, I would have taken Pearsall Worm. So good pick there. Instead, I'm going to take Blake Corum. And to me, this was the best pure runner in the draft. Sorry, Boggs, I like him a little bit more than Jonathon Brooks just as a runner. But at the same time, like I know the physical toolkit for Corum is not what it is for Jonathon Brooks and Trey Benson. He's slower. He's smaller. I just think he has really good vision and contact balance. So I think, and I like the fit actually with the Rams because the Rams clearly see him as a 1-for-1 interchangeable piece with Kyren Williams, another smaller, slower running back who nonetheless has been really successful. So I like this. Maybe Corum is just a straight backup, but that's fine because if anything happens to Kyren Williams, who did miss 4 games last year with a high ankle sprain, basically if Corum is in for Kyren Williams, who isn't playing, we're going to see Blake Corum ranked as an RB1 that week in the weekly rankings. Like there's no question about it. Basically, Sean McVay's offense is gold for running backs.
Let me ask you this here, Fitzy. Would you, if you like Blake Corum a lot, but would you skip on Brooks early and take Bowers, hoping you can get Corum coming back instead of, or there's so many good wideouts in this class where screw it, just give me Brooks, my number 1 rated running back, and then I'm going to take whatever wide receiver because the wide receivers are so deep. Yeah, I think that is what we're seeing a lot of people do is to take Brooks and then just take whatever wide receiver coming back.
I get it. I understand that. But, like I like the big 3 wide receivers in this class and Bowers so much, there's no way I could take Brooks over any of those 4.
Okay. Yeah. Same. For me, this pick here, I'm going to take Adonai Mitchell. So there we go. Fine. I get 2 of my Texans guys, but also, if the issues of Adonai Mitchell are the attitude, right? And, off the field stuff, now he has to go out and prove that he is not those things, right? Because he slipped in the draft and his GM stood up for him in a very vocal, media session there. So, there's also, he's pushing Alec Pierce right out of the starting job. So Anthony Richardson is really the guy that gets the biggest boost of Mitchell coming here because now you have JT, you have Josh Downs, they franchised Pittman and paid him. So now they have all kinds of weapons with Richardson. But I think Adonai is the type of guy that is going to be hugely impactful. And when we have a lot of these wide receivers, I got a bunch of wide receivers in this tier, and they're all kind of interchangeable. Give me the guy with the highest upside, and I think that's Adonai.
When I was torn on my last pick, it was Pearsall or AD Mitchell. I knew Fitz was going to take Corum in between those, but I was really up in the air between Pearsall and Mitchell. And I went with Pearsall, but on a different day, I might have gone with Adonai. I think that's a great pick here in the back half of the second round. I think it definitely falls off a bit here as well. There's a lot of names that it's like, yeah, I'd be happy to have them on my team, but not a lot that I'm like running to the podium to get at this point and really excited about. I'm going to take MarSawn Lloyd, and it's strictly a play on he was my second favorite running back in the class. And, there's been discussion about how Josh Jacobs' contract, they can actually get out of it, far sooner than 4 years. I know there's a little bit of faith in Debro, who has been really pounding the table for MarSawn Lloyd. And I love the player, too. Like, he doesn't need to sell me on the player. He is needing to sell me a bit on the landing spot, and he's kind of doing that. So in a weak running back class, at this point in the draft, back half of the second round, I'm just going to take a guy who was one of my favorite players to watch in the class, in MarSawn Lloyd, and now it's up to Fitz.
Oh, man. I feel like I'm not, I don't have an obvious choice here. I'm going to go with Xavier Legette to get someone who went in the first round, and the Panthers actually traded up to get Xavier Legette in the first round. You have to figure he's a big part of their plans. I do worry about the production profile, the fact that he did nothing in his first 4 years in college and then blew up in his final year, but he is an extraordinary physical specimen. The athleticism is just phenomenal, and he's really good after the catch. I don't love the landing spot. It just seems like the Panthers are sort of this star-crossed organization right now, and we don't know if Bryce Young is going to pan out or not. But, man, I just can't pass up on the first-round draft capital, I guess, and the athleticism. So a reluctant pick here of Xavier Legette.
I had the same thought, but I mean, that draft capital is not nothing. First round wide receiver in the second
Moved
half
up
of
to
a
get
rookie
him.
draft is that's really enticing. So I get it.
Yeah, I mean, it is. Legette is one of those guys, and I think that's what we have in this tier. To me, is we have guys that super upside, but maybe like Mitchell with Pittman there, and Josh Downs, and obviously JT. So if he landed in Carolina, he's way over Legette, I think, because now he's definitely the number one wide receiver on the team. But for me, I'm going to take Jalen Polk here, and the thought process is the same as what Fitz just said with Legette. Is I actually personally like Javon Baker more than I like Polk, right? And the Patriots took Baker as well, but it's the draft capital. They took Polk in the second, they took Baker in the fourth. So for me, they have more faith in Polk. They're going to put him out there in more situations to start. So Polk has a chance to be the number one from the jump for the Patriots with a new QB who a lot of us believe in. I like him. I hate his targets. I hope these guys are going to, come out and be gangbusters for him, these two wide receivers that the Pats drafted. But that's not a guarantee, but I do think that he could be the number one target receiver for the Patriots immediately. So I think this is a good selection, especially if you need a target-heavy guy. So give me Polk here.
I would have taken Polk. Since he's off the board, I'm going to take Baker and say that I think they're both going to have a chance to, establish themselves as the top option in this offense, as the course of their rookie seasons go on, because, I know Polk has the better draft capital, but who is going to block either of these two in this offense? So I'm going to take a player that I really like. I know we fell to the fourth round, but with Polk off the board, there's nobody that I really love, and I'm taking a guy who it's basically the case you just laid out for Polk, just a guy who went a couple rounds later, but who we both like. So I'm not even going to bother repeating all that, because I
have them in the same tier too, Worm. So
everything you said about Polk, yep, I totally agree. I would have taken Polk ahead of Baker, like you, but I think it makes a lot of sense. Quick recap of the second round: Keon Coleman, Jonathon Brooks, Trey Benson, Michael Penix Jr., Jaylen Wright, Ricky Pearsall, Blake Corum, Adonai Mitchell, MarSawn Lloyd, Xavier Legette, Jalen Polk, and Javon Baker. Before we get to the third round, just want to let everybody know, if you've got any Dynasty or best ball drafts on the horizon, or just want to see how the NFL draft has affected fantasy football values across the league, use our mock draft simulator tool at fantasypros.com/simulator. It's a fast and free way to practice for any kind of draft, including Dynasty startup drafts and rookie drafts. Again, that's at fantasypros.com/simulator. Let's go to the top of round 3. Fitz, start us off.
Roman Wilson, wide receiver, Pittsburgh Steelers. And I know Scott Bogman would walk 500 miles to avoid anything, any offense that has Arthur Smith involved in it, which is why Bogman hates Roman Wilson now, even though, no, he likes Roman Wilson. He liked him as a prospect. He just is ranking him really low because he's associated with Arthur Smith. But there's target opportunity in Pittsburgh. There's no denying that with Deontay Johnson out of the picture and George Pickens, who's actually had some trouble earning targets early in his career. There's immediate target upside for Roman Wilson, and this was a guy who really upped his stock during the pre-draft process at the Senior Bowl, at the Combine. So look at me all in on these Michigan guys. A Wisconsin graduate who hates the University of Michigan football program, and I just can't stop drafting ex-Wolverines. It's kind of weird.
I'll say my love for Wilson will go way up if anything happens to Pickens. And that's like for redraft too during the regular season. I just think it's a one target system that Arthur Smith runs.
Or if anything happens to Arthur Smith, if he, there's an open manhole cover that he doesn't see. And
that would be terrible. Let's not talk about bad things like that, Fitz, of course. So nobody wants that to happen at all. Right. So look, I have Roman Wilson in the next tier. I'm not going to take him this high. I do think there's a lot of opportunity there. Obviously there is, because they don't have good targets outside of Pickens, but I just don't like Arthur Smith. So for me, my pick here, I'm going to go back to the running backs. I'm going to take Ray Davis ending up in Buffalo because look, we know, I think Buffalo's window's closing a little bit here, but this offense, even, a little wide receiver starved, I think is going to still be very good because Josh Allen is at the helm. And if they're up late in games, they're going to run the ball, especially later in the season in the cold weather. Ray Davis is absolutely a closer. Third and fourth quarter will take the rock, bury the other team's defense with some fresh legs. I know James Cook is the main guy and he's the alpha. He's going to get most of the touches, but Ray Davis definitely has a chance to immediately be the number 2 and, potentially work around the goal line as well. So love Ray Davis. I like him ending up in Buffalo and I like getting him in the 3rd here.
Every time I make a pick, I'm like, well, one of these next 2 will be there for my next pick. And then those are the next 2 picks by you guys. You guys are really killing me so far. I'm going to make maybe a slight reach, at least based on ECR. It's a reach. But knowing I'm in this draft with Fitz, I'm going to take Kimani Vidal because I didn't think he was going to get to me. And he certainly wouldn't have lasted, too many more picks. But the opportunity is really obvious in Los Angeles with the Chargers backfield. Obviously, we just talked about it a bit when talking about Ladd McConkey. But this is an offense at the end of the day that wants to run the ball quite a bit. They want to beef up the offensive line. Again, they signed Gus Edwards. They added J.K. Dobbins. Vidal will have every opportunity. He's a running back that, Thor liked quite a bit, so there's talent there. Obviously was hyper productive at Troy and has an opportunity. So I'm going to happily take Vidal. Fitz, would you have taken him there? Was this the round I needed to take him to get him?
Yep, almost took him with the last pick. He was going to go with my next pick. So good move. The only issue with him is that he went in the 6th round and that he was the 15th running back off the board. That's
running back don't hold that much. It's way more important for wideouts and tight ends, I think.
And they were all
running backs. They'll take a guy off the scrap heap and let him start.
Yeah, and there were only 3 running backs drafted on day 2, none on day 1. So, and then all those running backs were grouped mostly pretty tightly. I mean, he won the landing spot lottery. There's no question about that. And I loved him as a prospect pre-draft. I mean, he's Troy University's all-time leading rusher. And he was tough, man. And the opposing defenses knew who was getting the ball, and this guy still produced.
Yeah, all right, I appreciate you hyping up my pick for me. Thank you.
Absolutely. So with Kimani Vidal off the board, I'm going to go with Ben Sinnott. I had put him as my tight end 2 before the draft, and then I think that was sort of validated with him being the only tight end to go on day 2. I take that back. Tip Ryman, the only pure blocking tight end in the draft, was the only other day 2 tight end. So it was Bowers on day 1. And then on day 2, it was only Ben Sinnott and Tip Ryman. So
no one could believe that Tip went in the 3rd. So it was shocking.
There were no other blocking tight ends in this draft. That was kind of the weird thing. They're all more pass catchers than blockers. So I guess I get it. But yeah, Sinnott is a good multifaceted tight end, and I think he's going to play a role in the Washington passing game right away.
Yeah, that's another one that Debro's a big fan of.
Yeah, for mine here, I'm going to, this might be a little bit of a reach, but give me Jermaine Burton, the wide receiver that ended up on the Cincinnati Bengals out of Alabama. And look, I like a lot of the competition that he has as well. T. Higgins is gone after this season. He may be gone before this season. That would be great for Burton, but Josevac, I like Charlie Jones, who they drafted last year too. Burton just has difference making speed that cannot be taught. And, with a guy like Joe Burrow and a guy like Chase working underneath, and we know Burrow's deep ball accuracy is amazing, I just think the pairing is awesome. So I really think Jermaine Burton is going to take off sooner rather than later in this offense. And we know it's a stretch the field vertical type of offense, and it's perfect for him. So I really like Jermaine Burton here.
Yep, really talented player. I think it's a great pick. I'm going to take Troy Franklin. I've been willing to look past, draft capital a couple of times already in this draft and say I don't care that this guy fell. It's somebody I really liked. I really liked Troy Franklin as a prospect. I understand that there were reasons that some NFL teams didn't love him as much, but still went early in the fourth. And I think I saw somebody point out that in other years, the pick he went with had been in the third round, like depending on how many comp picks there are. So, it's that late third, early fourth range. Gets paired with his college quarterback. Like, I think that's really important for a first-year guy. And, they are going to have a degree of chemistry that other rookie receivers just won't have with their quarterbacks. So mid-third, I think that's too far. Even given the fall he had in the NFL draft, I'm really happy to take him at 306 and send it to Fitz for the 307.
Yeah, so a guy like and haven't actually gotten in any of my rookie drafts so far, Luke McCaffrey. I'm going to take him here. Converted dual threat quarterback who's only been doing the wide receiver thing for a couple of years, and he's pretty good at it. He scored a lot of touchdowns for Rice his last couple of years, so it sounds like they want to make him a big slot, and I think he could be an interesting, I think he could be a good producer along with Jayden Daniels, fitting in with Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson. Just so athletic. Like, the guy's an athletic marvel, and hey, the bloodlines are pretty good with Christian McCaffrey being his brother, Big Ed McCaffrey being his dad. So yeah, I like him at this spot.
Bogman, who you got next?
I love that pick. Cliff Kingsbury offense. It's going to be a lot of fun. Give me Bucky Irving. I think that this is a dude that immediately gets touches. And I know, look, Bucky Irving failed the combine. He was one of the biggest losers in the pre-draft process. I totally understand that. But if we're looking at team context and the team that drafted him, we talked about how we don't really care about where the running back gets drafted. It's, in terms of where in the draft, but it's the location that he goes to, the team that he goes to. Tampa Bay has been trying to find someone to take touches from Rachaad White for the last 2 seasons. And this season, again, he ended up with the second most touches in the NFL. Christian McCaffrey is the only guy that had more touches than him. So I think Irving is here to come in on passing downs, be a change of pace back, be a guy in this offense that can get some touches away from Rachaad White so they don't wear him out early in his career like they have done some other guys. So for me, I think Irving fits here. A lot of teams are going to be RB desperate. So I really like taking Bucky Irving this late.
Yeah, I think even with the the issues he had during the draft process, like, again, at this point in your rookie draft, that's a great swing to take and try and hit on that lottery ticket. I'm going to take Malachi Corley. We're running out of guys who went before day 3. Corley is one of the few left who did. Obviously, he's been kind of comped as like a poor man's Debo in terms of like the style of play that you get out of Corley. The Jets were really excited when they drafted him. A guy that I liked, in the pre-draft process. There's an opportunity in that receiving game, so I will take Corley here, and Fitz is up next.
Oh, Worm, you've turned into quite the burr under my saddle. I wanted Malachi Corley there, so
well, it's easy when I've actually done a rookie draft with you before, so I know where you will actually make your picks rather than just theoretically.
He's so good after the catch, and Thor's comp of Amari Rodgers notwithstanding, I really like the player. I know the Debo comparisons are maybe a little overdone, but he's just one of those guys who give this guy the ball, and it's easy to scheme up short area touches for a receiver and just let them do their thing, and he's one of those guys. So with him
also
off the board,
a good feeder player. Sorry, Fitz, but also a good feeder player for a young quarterback who we assume is going to be coming in here after Aaron Rodgers. So a guy, throw it short to the guy and let him work with it. So we saw Debo do that for Brock Purdy as well.
Yeah. So with Corley off the board, I'm going to turn to the other professional football team in New York and go with Tyron Tracy, the Giants running back, converted wide receiver who has just some pretty special athleticism. And yeah, like he might need some time to grow into the role of running back, considering that, he was not doing it for a very long time at Purdue after transferring from Iowa. But there's not much of a depth chart for him to ascend. He's only got Devin Singletary ahead of him, who's capable, but certainly not special. Eric Gray never really got a foothold in this offense last year. So I think Tracy might be the passing down back for the Giants right away, and maybe there's some early down upside.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about Tracy last week too. I think you need to view him more as a weapon than just a running back. So because he played wide receiver, a lot of trick plays. They like those guys. They took Wandale, or they paid Wandale last year too. So they're looking for that guy to fill that role, I think. Give me Jalen McMillian, the safest wide receiver I feel like left in a rookie draft here. He ends up in Tampa Bay. Not the greatest spot, obviously, because we have Rachaad White that can catch the ball out of the backfield, paired with Mike Evans, future Hall of Famer, Chris Godwin, who I like, but showed a little bit of slowing down last season. But I do think that McMillian fits. I think he's immediate day one starter here. I think he's going to take this job in camp over Trey Palmer, and he's going to be on the field a lot. That doesn't necessarily mean a ton, because Jonathan Mingo was on the field a lot last season, right? But I think, the more you're on the field, the more opportunities you have. And I think McMillan's a starter pretty quick this season. So give me McMillian here.
I made the mistake in one of my rookie drafts of passing up on one of my personal favorites in the back of the third, and then he did not get to me again another round. So I'm just going to take Audric Estime, again, a guy who fell on actual draft day, but just a prospect I loved. I didn't care about the speed at the combine. In watching him, he was one of my favorite players to watch. I said it 1,000 times. I think there's a role for Audric Estime in the NFL, and at this point in the draft, and maybe even in that backfield. I mean, Javonte Williams, still with the injuries he's dealt with, and they will give different backs opportunities. I know Jaleel McLaughlin's there too. There's a lot of carries in that backfield that are kind of question marks right now. I'm not really sure where they're going to go, and I like the player Estime, so I'm going to take him here at the end of the third. Quick recap here: Roman Wilson, Ray Davis, Kimani Vidal, Ben Sinnott, Jermaine Burton, Troy Franklin, Luke McCaffrey, Bucky Irving, Malachi Corley, Tyron Tracy, Jalen McMillian, and Audric Estime. Now it's to Fitz with the 401.
Let's lead off with quarterback number 7, Spencer Rattler. And I know it's not ideal that he fell into the 5th round when a lot of people thought he might be a day 2 pick, but he did go to a pretty good spot where Derek Carr is maybe under the gun here, because Derek Carr started to hear the boo birds in the Big Easy last year, and with good reason. That passing game just did not click. And here comes Spencer Rattler, this intriguing dual threat quarterback who really seemed to help himself in the pre-draft process. I don't know whether that documentary that he did when he was a high school kid hurt him, because apparently a lot of NFL teams did not like the way he came off in that. But good Lord, he was a high school kid. Yeah. I mean, what about all the impressive media work he did at the Combine and the Senior Bowl, where everyone who talked to him was blown away by how open this kid was, how sharp he seemed, how humble and modest he seemed. So maybe this kid really has grown and matured. So I'm not worried about that stuff. I think he's become a pretty good ball player, and we've known for a long time that tools are special. He was this incredibly coveted quarterback prospect for a good reason.
I think it's a great pick. I want, if you were just laying out your rankings, Fitz, where do you think Rattler should be going?
What do you mean, overall?
If it wasn't the combined effort to do this draft, if you were kind of writing out a mock draft, where would you place him? Where do you think is the right spot for him to be going? Irrespective of again, team needs.
Yeah, back half of the third, maybe.
Yeah, I had him at 35, and he just went 37.
Yeah, I considered him in the back half of the third. I mean, I think everything you said about of all the landing, I have him in a campus to Canton league where we really need a quarterback at the NFL level, and he is one of our best options. And this was one of my favorite landing spots he could have gone to. The fact that he fell to round 5 isn't great, but the fact that he went to the Saints, I think, is as strong as you could have hoped for, really, in terms of getting an opportunity.
Totally.
My pick
Box to you.
here, I'm going to take Jatavian Sanders, the tight end from Texas. And to me, this is kind of the end of guys that I'm really pretty confident in for this season. Rattler, I'm not so confident this season. Obviously, Penix, not for production this season. But in terms of the skill position guys, taking Sanders and knowing that Tommy Tremble is really the only guy standing in his way, maybe a vet like Ian Thomas, tight end is the toughest position to adjust to in the NFL coming out of college. So it is harder for these guys to make it, which is why I have Sinnott and I have Sanders just a little bit lower than I think most boards do. But this is a team that is desperate for targets. We talked about it with Legette. They moved up to get him. They spent money on the O-line. They have invested now. They've invested in targets for Young. So I think that this is a guy that could end up starting. If you need a tight end, I think he's a pretty decent option in a rookie draft this year because there's not much left at that position. There's maybe one other guy that I really kind of want. Not a ton left, though.
I'm not sure which is the other guy you want. I'm going to take a tight end, and at this point in the draft, round 4, you're just kind of taking swings. Anyway, I'm going to pick Erick All. Obvious
the only one
opportunity.
I have left that I want.
Yeah, there's an obvious opportunity at the position in Cincinnati, and it's a good offense, a good quarterback to be paired with. It's just injury. I mean, if he stays healthy, this is an absolute steal. I think Debro, even with the injury concerns, has him just outside his top 20 in his Superflex rookie rankings. Just a really talented guy who, if he stays healthy, will absolutely, be a great profit for me at this price. So I'm happy to take Erick All, and he's kind of the last of the tight ends, at least that I would strongly consider or be really happy to get at this point. So I'll send it to Fitz for the 404.
Yeah, now you're just being a jerk worm and taking the guys I really wanted since Erick All. Just as Kimani Vidal won the landing spot lottery at running back, I think Erick All won it at tight end. Going to Cincinnati, getting to work with Joe Burrow, having Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Bogman's boy Jermaine Burton clear things out deep. So there's going to be a lot of room to work underneath. I love that pick there. So I'm going to have to hurt you, Worm, and take a guy I know you like. I'm going to go with your boy Tez Walker on the Ravens, Devontae Walker. And honestly, the fact that the Ravens took him early in day 3 sort of is encouraging because I know that Devontae Walker is a really raw prospect. He is a size speed guy who can make some acrobatic catches and seems to be pretty good at tracking the deep ball, but basically he's really raw. Does not have a lot of Power 5 football experience, just missed part of last year after transferring to North Carolina because of eligibility issues. Only played, I think, 7 or 8 games for the Tar Heels. So the level of competition is going to be an adjustment, but the fact that a team that is known for smart drafting, that they were willing to invest a round 4 pick on this guy really encourages me about the outlook for Devontae Walker.
Great kid too, been through a lot of adversity and just has a great head on his shoulders and all the interviews and stuff. Obviously I've watched every second of it being a Ravens fan ever since the draft, but just a really great story and great kid who to your point about being raw, has not had the opportunity to just focus entirely on football like you would want. And so I'm really excited to see what he does going forward. I am biased though. So Boggs, you're up next.
Give me Michael Pratt. And I know he's a 7th round quarterback. Maybe we don't like that, but this is still super flex. And I hate Sean Clifford. So I think that Michael Pratt immediately is going to step in and be the backup quarterback to Jordan Love. And that if Jordan Love gets hurt, the keys to this offense are pretty damn good. And I think it's an easy number 2 job for him to win. And it's super flex. This guy's going to be more valuable, even if he's only more valuable to the person rostering Jordan Love. I think it's important. And what was the stat that I said earlier? 67 QBs started in the NFL last season, right? So it's not a crazy thought in a super flex league to go out and get a backup, especially for a good quarterback in a good offense. So I like Michael Pratt. I thought it was weird that he fell all the way to the 7th, but I love this landing spot because I think the Packers were desperate for a good backup QB. Sean Clifford was not going to get it done, and I really like Pratt landing there. So give me Michael Pratt here.
I like Pratt the player. I wasn't really thinking I was going to consider any other quarterbacks once Rattler was off the board. I mean, I guess it depends on how the board shakes out. Fitz, were you interested in taking another quarterback, or were you looking elsewhere at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I maybe earlier than I would like for Pratt, but I think Pratt should be drafted in a 5-round Superflex draft. And I agree that he is going to boot Sean Clifford right off the Green Bay roster.
Let's go.
I'm not trying to target Fitz here, picking before him. I'm hoping I'm not about to break his heart again, but I am taking a Badger in Braylon Allen.
You did. You did.
Oh, God, I'm so sorry, Fitz. I'm not that sorry. All's fair in love and fantasy football. But we talked in one of our early shows, early in the draft process, that I was a very big fan of Braylon Allen. And obviously the landing spot is not what we were hoping for. And there are knocks against him as a prospect, even, irrespective of the landing spot. But he's just somebody that I can't stop thinking about how much fun he was to watch as a young freshman in the Big Ten. I think there's talent in, maybe not of every aspect of his game, but in certain aspects of the game, I think he's really, really talented. And he still went in the 4th round. And, being a high upside backup isn't always the worst thing for a running back, because you will get opportunities more often than not. So I'm sorry to break your heart once again.
No, that's okay. And just to piggyback on what you're saying, Worm, I mean, you talked about seeing him as a young freshman, young being the operative word. He is going to enter the NFL at age 20, and I don't think he turns 21 until January. So he's going to play basically the entirety of his rookie season, or sit on the bench for the entirety of his rookie season at age 20, which gives him maybe a longer runway to get sort of this thing shaken out where he's sitting behind Breece Hall for years and years and just collecting cobwebs on the bench. And it does suck that the Jets not only took him, but Isaiah Davis, who was some people's a sleeper.
I
some
love
people
Isaiah Davis.
And I think some people in Dynasty League still had hope for Israel Abanikanda, who's now part of that logjam behind Breece Hall on that depth chart. So stop drafting running backs, Jets. You're killing us here. So pretty impressive that I think Braylon Allen might have been the youngest player in the entire draft this year and has more 100-yard rushing games than any other running back in this class. So not a bad pick in the middle of the 4th round. I'm going to go with Will Shipley. And to be fair, I was kind of debating Braylon Allen versus Shipley in my rookie rankings. Shipley's got a nice, versatile skill set. I think he could be a passing down back if you needed him to be, and I think he could be an early down back if you needed him to be. I don't think he's a great prospect, but I think he's a solid prospect, and he went to a pretty good place in Philadelphia where they've got a nice offensive infrastructure.
For my pick here, I'm going to stick with the running back. I'm going to take Dylan Lobby, the running back out of New Hampshire that ended up with the Raiders. And this is because I think there's opportunity. I do think Zamir White's the guy. And I went down this rabbit hole with Debro in a text the other day because I think he's the high man on Zamir White. I do think White's the guy, but I do think there's opportunity here. And let's remember, Austin Eckler came out of the small school as an undersized running back that was productive in both the run game and the pass game, right? I think it's the same scenario for Lobby here. Does it mean that he's going to make it? No. There's guys like this drafted every single year that end up on special teams and do nothing. Eric Gray is a guy that Fitz mentioned earlier that I think fits that bill a little bit as well. But I think Lobby's got a chance because behind Zamir White, it is Amir Abdullah and Alexander Madison, who just fumbled again. So I think that there is enough opportunity for touches immediately for Lobby to make him interesting here. So I'll go ahead and select him in the 4th.
I will keep the running back train rolling with Isaac Guerendo to the 49ers. Sometimes when the Niners invest in a running back later in the draft, it's Tyrion Davis-Price, and sometimes it's Elijah Mitchell, and I don't know which one Guerendo's going to be, but the speed makes him such an obvious fit in this offense if he gets the opportunity. McCaffrey has had injury problems in the past. He didn't last year, really, but he's had them at times. So a fast guy in a Kyle Shanahan offense, I'm willing to take the risk here and send it over to Fitz.
Well, you broke the streak of snaking me on picks, Worm.
Well, you just snake me, Fitz. So.
Oh, did I? Yeah. So, I mean, it was just Guerendo was buried behind Braylon Allen and on the Wisconsin depth chart for a while. I think he's just kind of a straight line guy, but whatever. I'm going with Malik Washington here. Prolific producer for the Virginia Cavaliers last year after not really doing too much early on in a terrible offense at Northwestern University. Really broke out, and he goes to an interesting offense with Miami. Not a lot of room for him to contribute in year one behind Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and now Odell Beckham Jr., but, a sort of draft and stash guy.
You actually burned both of us, Fitz, because I was between Garendo and Washington. I was like, well, he went in the 6th round. He's behind a couple of receivers. I could probably get him one more, group of 3 away, and apparently I could not. So I think that's a good pick there.
Literally the end of a tier for me was Malik Washington. So I'll take Jacob Cowing with this next pick. I think it's the same idea as Malik Washington. You look at Jacob Cowing and the depth chart in San Francisco, he's buried. It's Ayuk, Debo, Pearsall, Ronnie Bell was great last year. Jawan Jennings has a lot of experience. And then probably Jacob Cowing. And that's if he pushes off Trent Taylor, Danny Gray, and then kind of like Chris Conley, right? So he's got an uphill battle. But if as a 4th round pick, I think he's more guaranteed of a roster spot than some of these other guys down the board. So, and I love watching Jacob Cowing play. Undersized guy, lots of speed, could be a special teamer as well and give you a little bit of juice there. So I'll go with Jacob Cowing with my last pick in the 4th.
I had to make sure I got at least one Raven, so I'm going to take Rasheen Ali here. Scored a lot of touchdowns in his college career. I don't think Keaton Mitchell, I haven't seen an update recently, but given when his injury took place, I don't think he's going to be at full speed at the start of the season. Derrick Henry is 30 years old. They said, throughout the entire draft process, they were basically guaranteeing they were going to draft a running back at some point. Ali was the one they took. Again, he's been productive. It's the end of the 4th round in a Superflex draft, right? You're just taking lottery tickets at this point. I'm happy to take Ali in a backfield that I know wants to run a lot and has some question marks in terms of longevity. I'll say not durability, but longevity at the other spots there. So quick recap around 4. Spencer Rattler, Jatavian Sanders, Erick All, Devontae Walker, Michael Pratt, Braylon Allen, Will Shipley, Dylan Laube, Isaac Garendo, Malik Washington, Jacob Cowing, and Rasheen Ali. And now it's to Fitz for the final round, round 5.
Cade Stover, solid tight end prospect, going to be paired with a really good quarterback in CJ Stroud.
I will go with Anais Smith, the wide receiver out of A&M, ending up in Philly. Lots and lots of speed, an unteachable trait, and a good system to be in. And he's competing with the ghost of Devontae Parker, fellow rookie Johnny Wilson, and burnout Paris Campbell. So I think there's potential for opportunity quickly for him.
I'll take another tight end here. The uber athletic Theo Johnson got drafted in the 4th round to the Giants. Obviously, Darren Waller. A lot of strong rumors or official. I don't actually remember if it's at least the very least strong rumors about retiring. So an opportunity there, and he's just crazy athletic. So I'll take Theo Johnson.
I'm going to take at 504 Johnny Wilson. And here's my hope. There is not a lot of room for him to contribute right away with the Philadelphia Eagles. But my hope is that he eventually does convert to tight end. And all of a sudden he becomes of real value where you're getting him. Because, I don't know, the upside for Johnny Wilson is maybe a 700 receiving yard season. At wide receiver, that's not very valuable. But if he winds up giving that to you at tight end, that's immensely valuable. So here's hoping for a position switch.
I'm going to go with Bub Means, the wide receiver out of Pittsburgh, ending up on the New Orleans Saints. Our boy Debro actually called this in my 7-round mock. I gave him an opportunity. I was like, I'm on the last pick with the Saints. Who do you think they throw a dart on? I gave him a list. He goes, I kind of like Bub Means. So he called this.
Wow.
But he went at 152. 100 picks before the draft ended, 105 picks before the draft ended. So I think the Saints kind of like him. And as we know, outside of Chris Olave, it's Rashid Shaheed, who I like, and I like A.T. Perry, a big body wide receiver, but I think Means offers a little bit more. So I think there's opportunity for him to get a look at least kind of early here.
I'll go with Jamari Thrash, a guy I liked watching at Louisville, and the Browns have made a lot of swings in that round 3 to 5 range on wide receiver recently. You think about Cedric Tillman recently. The fact that they keep taking swings tells me that they think there's still, roles to be filled, in their wide receiver room. So getting the round 5 capital, I'll take Thrash because I just like the player. Fitz, you're up.
Joe Milton, Time to bring up Bazooka Joe here. I am obviously betting on arm talent, and this is a guy who can put a ball into orbit when he wants to. I mean, like, might have the best arm of any quarterback alive. And, like, that includes any starting NFL quarterback. Like, this guy's rocket is just insane. Obviously, he needs some cleanup work because he is Nuke Lelouch from Bull Durham. You don't know where the ball's going. Hopefully, they can work on the mechanics, and down the line, he could develop into an interesting project at quarterback.
Give me, I'm going to back it up here. Give me Jordan Travis. I talked about a quarterback that may need to throw short to some options here with Malachi Corley earlier, and maybe that is Jordan Travis because Aaron Rodgers is my age, not a good spot to be in the NFL. Tyrod Taylor is, I think, still closer to me than he is Worm. So that's not great either. And they traded Zach Wilson. There's not a plan on the roster beyond this season at the position. So maybe Jordan Travis sits and learns and is thrust into a role fairly quickly here. And I like his leadership, good leader, FSU undefeated until the bowl game. And I think he's underrated as a QB as well. So I'll go Jordan Travis with my second to last pick here.
By the way, Tyrod Taylor was my favorite college player of all time because before I was a Terp, I was a Virginia Tech fan growing up because both my parents went to VT, and it was just the right age where I loved watching Tyrod Taylor play. I will be taking Jared Wiley. This is really like a lot more tight end heavy than I planned to be in this draft, but I mean the case is obvious, like possible successor to Travis Kelce in an offense with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. Like, I'm just happy to take that risk here. So nothing more really needs to be said about Wiley, I don't think. Fitz, you're up.
I'll take Brendan Rice, Jerry's kid. It's not great that he fell into the 7th round, but he did not end up on a team with an insurmountable wide receiver depth chart with the Chargers. I know they've brought in DJ Chark. They've got Josh Palmer, Lad McConkey, but like Quentin Johnston, who knows if he's even going to be on their roster a year from now. I think there's a place for Brendan Rice to be like the 4th or 5th receiver here and maybe work his way up.
Just the biggest snipe in this draft, Fitz. Brendan Rice is absolutely the last player I even want to take in this draft. And I love the opportunity with the Chargers for him. I think he is another dude that's underrated, very physical, not like his dad a lot, but very, very physical wideout. Love him. That's why they took him. They're going to run the ball a lot. I'll take Theo Johnson.
No, you won't. I took him at 503.
Oh my God. You took Theo Johnson?
I can't believe we got almost the entire draft without that happening. Almost the entire draft season without that happening. And then here
I totally did not see it. I don't know why. I was looking for you went so quick on it, and then to Johnny Wilson. I just didn't see him. All right, give me Jaquan Jackson, opportunity in Tennessee. But like I said, I don't really this is how much this Brendan Rice pick threw me off here. But give me Jaquan Jackson. He's the next guy up on my board. I guess, there's opportunity in the slot because Traylon Burks has sucked. So I guess that's just a dart throw maybe on Jackson, but I really don't like a lot of the guys left.
Yeah, I really, really don't like any of that. I was also eyeing Rice for my last pick. I don't really like anybody. I'm going to take Theo Johnson. No, I'm just kidding. I'm going to take Jordan Whittington simply because the Rams just traded away Ben Skoranek earlier today that we recorded this, and maybe opens up a little something for him. And, again, this is a point in the draft where I'm not really excited about anybody. I'll take a Texas guy for Bogman to wrap things up here. So we got through 60 picks, guys. Before we get out of here, any main takeaways, whether it's positionally or a player who went, particularly high or low? Is there any kind of one thing that happened in this draft that stood out, Fitz?
Well, your repeated snaking of me, you're off my Christmas card list, Worm. No, I don't know. I mean, I didn't think it was that unexpected as far as where guys went positionally. I didn't think there were really any egregious reaches. Things pretty much seem normal. I don't know, maybe we've just done so many mocks together, but everything was ordered in kind of a nice logical way to me.
Yeah, I would kind of agree with that. What do you think, Boggs?
I think, just making the point that we made in the first round was big of like, these are the 8 guys that we would take. And, we're not pushing anybody else up there. We get it. It's not going to happen that way in every single draft, probably in most drafts, because of the way the board falls, right? And the way the positional needs and values of other teams in your league. But there is a clear tier at 8. So we just made that clear. And I think taking shots on QBs in Superflex leagues late is smarter. It's a smarter strategy. You saw the Patriots do it in the real NFL for a long time and then trade away a QB that developed behind the GOAT. So not a bad strategy to have in Superflex.
Let me ask you this as a final question, because one strategy I really like to employ that has worked out well for me in the past is if I have a late round first, find somebody who I don't think their team is going to be that good next year and try and trade it to them and say, hey, if you want the help now, I'll give you this first for next year's first. This is a group, though, at the back of the first round that I do really like. Like, I like Ladd McConkey and Xavier Worthy and Brian Thomas. Would you be trying to employ that strategy this year, Bogman, or do you think the back end of the first round is strong enough that if you have a pick there, you don't want to trade in next year, which the class is supposed to be strong at running back, but doesn't look that strong otherwise?
Yeah, look, if I'm looking for a wideout, I definitely don't want to trade out. But if I'm looking for a QB, it's either Penix you're sitting on or Bo Nix, who's a big question mark in the team context isn't great. So I think if I'm looking for a wide receiver in particular, or some of those running backs fall, and that's what I need, then yes, I would want to stay and not trade that. I think in general, that's a good strategy to have though. So this year though, like you mentioned, the talent is deep, especially at wide receiver. So positionally, it depends a little bit, but for the most part, no, probably I'd want to stick and take some of these guys.
Fitz, same question.
You make the key point that you're looking for someone who's probably going to be picking early in the following year's draft, because you do have to, in assessing the value of these picks, you have to factor in that if you're trading a 2024 pick for a 2025 pick, you're losing a year of production. You're getting nothing from that 2025 pick in 2024. A user just asked me that question, like, why on our trade value chart do we have the 2025 picks valued so much lower than the 2024 picks? Is it because the 2025 class is terrible? I just said, no, it's because you have to account for them not doing anything for you this year. Like, those picks will gain value as time goes on and it gets closer to the 2025 draft. But for now, to do it end of the 2024 first round for an early 2025 first round, I think it's a reasonable idea if you are not hell-bent on getting a wide receiver, because that's where the value is pretty much at the end of the first round.
I did this in our work league last year. It worked out amazingly well because I went from the 110, which I believe was Quentin Johnston, to the 104 this year, which was Malik Nabers. So worked out very well. That was not a trade with Debro, which is rare to say because most of the trades are in that league.
He's addicted to trading.
That was not a Debro one. This is a long episode, but obviously we got through a ton of players. So I think that was great. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in and sticking with us through all 5 rounds. For Bogman and Fitz, thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll see you again next time.